This is a project. We're demonstrating a new meat cutting technique. Most of this was developed at the University of Nebraska Meats Lab down in Lincoln. Chris Calkins was kind of the head researcher, and he had a colleague down in Florida that helped. It's called a muscle profiling research project. It's funded by your beef checkoff dollars. And what they did is they took all the muscles in the carcass and broke them down and separated them, and then tested them all for juiciness, tenderness, flavoring, marbling, cooking ability, both dry and wet, and then graded all those muscles into whether they were, good muscles to go searching for new products or not. Most of this particular cut of meat traditionally was just used for hamburger and roast beef. And now we've developed Delmonico steaks and country-style boneless ribs and Sierra cut and Denver steaks. And they've found that there's tremendous difference between individual muscles in a carcass, and some of those muscles in the chuck region of the animal, which is the shoulder, actually are as tender or more tender than some of those back in the loin, where we traditionally have gotten most of our steaks from. Well, we start with this big chunk of meat here, and it actually is called the chuck roll, and it lies between the shoulder blade of the animal and the ribs. And actually, as you roll that thing over, you can actually see where the ribs fit into it. There's about 3 major muscles in that we cut from. The first thing we do is we actually cut about 3 steaks right off the end of this, and they turn into what we call Delmonico steaks, chuck eye steaks or Delmonico steaks. That actually is the same muscle as the ribeye muscle. It's just a little bit farther forward on the animal, so very similar quality to a ribeye steak. Then we go back and we peel those 2 muscles apart. The top one is called the chuck eye, and it's a little rounder. And what we develop it into is the boneless country-style beef ribs, which are very tender, very tasty, very juicy. And then we can come back and take the bottom big flat muscle from this chuck roll, and we make Denver steaks out of it. You can see the amount of marbling that's in those, very tender, very juicy. This Denver cut muscle actually has been found to be the 4th most tender muscle in the animal's body. So a very tender muscle coming from the chuck region of the animal. Then there's one more muscle called the Sierra cut, and it typically is about that size that you're looking at. A little bit coarser textured, fans out a little bit, typically more like a flank steak, but very good quality of eating, tremendous flavor to it, so it works really well. So these are basically cuts that have been developed from what was a low quality piece of meat, a cheaper piece of meat, and now we're turning it into high quality stuff by just a new method of cutting it up.